The challenge with these exercises, in my opinion, is always how to turn promises into practical action on the ground. Having waited so long to become king, his well-kept secret has the potential to permanently ruin the British monarchy. There is a shocking reality buried deep within Buckingham Palace that makes all other royal scandals seem trivial. Rumors about a hidden son have been around for decades, and now, with very strong allegations, the forgotten son demands recognition. Is this forgotten heir the heir apparent? What happens when crowns fall apart and bloodlines split? Come hear King Charles talk about the son he concealed and who was forgotten. What if all you believed to be true about the royal family turned out to be a well-crafted lie? In actuality, King Charles has been concealing more than simply his previous relationships. Palace insiders have been whispering about a narrative for decades, hidden deep inside the shadows of royal procedure. A tale of a youngster who never should have been born. The accusations are astounding. Far from the prying eyes of the British press, on one of Charles's official assignments overseas, an incident occurred that would plague the royal family for decades to come. The future king was drawn to a woman who was not from aristocratic backgrounds or exclusive circles. The brief meeting that ensued would produce the most perilous secret in the monarchy. Everything changed in an instant when she found out she was pregnant. She claims that Charles made her a terrifying pledge. The pregnancy should be remote from the castle. Don't talk about what happened. Keep the father's identity a secret. Terrified and isolated, the woman could only fade into quiet. The cover-up, however, was just getting started. When rumors of the pregnancy finally made it to Queen Elizabeth, she responded coldly. According to palace sources, she dismissed the issue with a joke and ruled that it would never be brought up again. The Queen had a very clear message. In their universe, this child would not exist. The actual strength of royal influence is revealed by what transpired afterward. Non-disclosure agreements just sprang up. They organized financial settlements in secret. Overly knowledgeable royal employees started to leave their jobs, either retiring early or being moved to far-off postings where they couldn't cause any issue. The infant was methodically removed from the world. He was not linked to the royal family by any birth certificates. No press releases, christening papers, hospital records, or photos. There was nothing that would link him to the palace. The birth seemed to have never taken place. The boy was silently brought into the world and swiftly taken out of it, at least the one that had thrones and crowns. He was transferred to live thousands of miles away from Britain after being adopted under a false name and having his identity erased. A well-constructed lie-based life that conceals the reality. And it was successful. Even he would not have known his true identity as a kid, adolescent, or young man because his royal lineage was so deeply buried beneath layers of secret, legal manipulation, and time. He would go decades without realizing that monarch's legacy ran through his veins and that his very presence would one day alter the course of history. Lawyers put in extra hours behind closed doors to guarantee total silence. When reporters approached the story too closely, their inquiries were abruptly stopped. Questioning palace officials were quietly dismissed from their positions. With merciless efficiency, the royal machine of secrecy ran. Few people are aware that this supposed son is currently leading a normal life, totally oblivious to the possibility that he is the legitimate successor to the British throne. He has a family, a career, and a typical existence, all of which are based on carefully crafted lies by Britain's most powerful family. The most terrifying aspect is that, if this child is real, he would be King Charles's eldest son. That is what changes everything in royal succession. However, this would not be the first time that the royal family has concealed terrible facts. What if decades of handling royal scandals taught Charles these strategies? A pattern of dishonesty. Every controversy has given the British monarchy new skills in damage control, and they have mastered the art of surviving crises. In actuality, the royal family has been handling explosive secrets for almost a century, learning how to bury the next one even more deeply with each catastrophe. In 1936, Edward IX was the first. The palace learned an important lesson when he abdicated the monarchy to wed Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. Their hand might be forced by public opinion. As centuries of tradition broke down for the sake of one man's wishes, the establishment looked on in horror. They swore behind closed doors that it would never occur again. The royal machine went into overdrive. Courtiers, spin doctors, and advisors started developing fresh plans. Every action was planned. Every syllable was practiced. The objective was straightforward. Manage the story, influence public opinion, and defend the crown at all costs. No longer was the media merely an annoyance. It was a battleground. Headlines were manipulated, stories were leaked, and devoted reporters were rewarded. Scandals were discreetly put aside, and whispers were buried. Since there were no mistakes, no admissions, and no truths to discover, quiet turn became their most effective weapon. However, Nothing they had in their arsenal could prepare them for what was about to happen. They had never dealt with somebody like Princess Diana. She didn't play the game their way, she didn't remain silent, and she didn't follow the script. She spoke where they remained silent. She was honest while they were making up stories. She also opened a realm that the royal family had been attempting to keep closed for generations. Her 1995 BBC interview shocked people all across the world. She looked straight into the camera and told the truth about her marriage with a quiet resolve. In reference to Camilla, Charles, and herself, she stated that there were 3 of them in the marriage. Officially, the fairy tale was extinct. At the time, hardly many people understood how this one interview completely changed the rules for handling royal crises. Diana had circumvented every media manager, every palace formality, and every meticulously erected obstacle. People believed her when she spoke straight to them. The palace discovered that using conventional means to influence the story was no longer an option. They need new techniques that were more nuanced and advanced. Then Charles had his most embarrassing experience. A confidential phone call between Charles and Camilla was leaked to the media in 1993. The private recording, known as Tampon Gate, exposed incredibly private information that destroyed all semblance of royal honor. People were furious. Charles wasn't merely disloyal. In the worst sense of the word, he was uncivilized, desperate, and completely human. His prestige fell to levels never before seen by the monarchy. Damage control went into overdrive behind closed doors. Insiders in the palace desperately tried to control the fallout, but the lesson was obvious. Private discussions could turn into weapons of mass destruction. The biggest concern of the monarchy turned out to be the Jeffrey Epstein controversy. There are some stains that cannot be removed by washing. Public relations was unable to resolve Prince Andrew's nightmare due to his affiliation with the convicted felon. Andrew was deprived of all royal responsibilities and was exiled from public life as a result of the scandal's corrosive nature. For the first time in contemporary history, the institution was fully protected at the expense of a senior royal. It was a harsh yet powerful message. No one was larger than the crown itself, regardless of where they were born. Charles was unable to avoid scandal even as king. There were rumors that his non-profit organization was receiving substantial sums of money from foreigners in return for honors and access. Conveniently, palace aides took the blame when inquiries started, but uneasy doubts about the future king's proximity to selling royal influence persisted. It was getting hard to ignore the trend. The formula for every scandal was the same. Wait for the public to move on after denying, deflecting, and sacrificing someone lower in the hierarchy. The palace learned new methods for rewriting history, concealing the truth, and stifling witnesses during each crisis. They had mastered their techniques by the time Charles's supposed hidden son was born. Of all the scandals and cover-ups, none required more skilled trickery than turning Charles's lover into Britain's beloved queen. But they knew exactly how to make someone vanish without a trace. How did they manage to do it? The conspiracy of Camilla. The public accepted a meticulously constructed account of Charles and Camilla's relationship for many years. The palace wanted everyone to believe that they only got back together after their marriages had ended amicably. The reality is much darker. What if, although Charles was married to Diana, Camilla never truly left his life? Palace insiders tell a completely different story behind closed doors. Even in those early fairy tale years, when Diana believed she had won her husband's heart, the emotional affair continued. Camilla was constantly in the background as Diana waved from royal balconies while everyone else observed. Late-night phone conversations, confidential meetings set up by reliable middlemen, and advising sessions that influenced Charles's most significant choices. Diana wasn't battling a recollection of Charles's previous romantic partner. She was fighting a woman who would not give up. The extent of Camilla's influence during Diana's most trying years is not well known. She was simply viewed by the public as the other lady, a silent scandal, and a cause. To Prince Charles, however, she was much more than that. Camilla was more than simply his lover. She was his best friend and the one he turned to when everything else failed. She calmed him down, offered him guidance, and supported him through it all. She was the person he trusted the most. Camilla was immediately next to Charles, but Diana felt isolated and excluded. Mentally, emotionally, and even in his choices. Although she lacked a formal title, her impact was far greater than most people realized. And even before the public really noticed it, she was already intricately entwined with the royal story, whether anyone liked it or not. Diana felt thoroughly outwitted behind closed doors. Someone who had a 20-year history with her husband ruined any effort to have a sincere relationship with him. Later, palace employees disclosed that Diana frequently felt alone and controlled by a system that shielded Camilla while exposing her to public scrutiny. Diana's death in 1997 presented the palace with an insurmountable obstacle. How can the most despised woman in Britain be made deserving of the crown of Diana? A masterwork of public relations warfare was the response. First, wait for the public's sadness to subside. Second, progressively portray Camilla as the victim of unjust vilification. Step 3. Emphasize her devotion to Charles in his worst hours. Step 4. Show her carrying out her regal responsibilities with taciturn dignity. Behind closed doors, media experts put in extra effort to get favorable coverage of Camilla in outlets that were supportive. Stories of her generosity, her sense of humor, and her sincere affection for Charles started to circulate among royal insiders. They meticulously and gradually changed her entire public persona. Although it took over 20 years, the change was successful. The fact that the palace totally undid the harm Camilla inflicted only serves to highlight how amazing her ascent was. For the suffering she caused Diana, there was never any public accountability. The manipulation of emotions was not acknowledged. No regrets for the years of dishonesty. Rather, she became queen consort, a title that seemed unattainable at a time when millions of people saw her as the fairy tale's destroyer. Something extraordinary had been accomplished by the palace machinery. She became their greatest asset after they turned her into their biggest problem. As a symbol of unwavering devotion, the woman who formerly stood next to the king symbolized everything that was wrong with the monarchy. This, however, is what the palace was unable to totally eradicate. Many people still recall the truth of Camilla's ascent to power, even after years of meticulous rebranding. They recall Diana's sobs, loneliness, and frantic efforts to salvage a marriage that was never truly hers. A royal heir could undoubtedly be permanently erased by the same palace machinery that made a mistress into a queen. The palace had mastered the skill of changing history for Camilla, but they were unable to completely remove any evidence of their most sinister secret. When that secret takes on a face, what happens? The heir of Australia. A man whose face has the power to demolish the British monarchy resides in Australia, thousands of miles away from Buckingham Palace. There are no royal records that include his name. Neither Charles nor Camilla are listed on his birth certificate, but the same thing is said by everyone who meets him. He resembles both of them exactly. People have stopped him on the street because of the strong likeness. Charles's unique profile is reflected in his nose. His eyes are shaped similarly to Camilla's. The same royal genes that created a monarch may be used to chisel his jawline. Investigators have assembled a timeline behind closed doors that unnerves palace officials. According to the man, he was born in the middle of the 1960s, when Charles was traveling overseas on enigmatic solo expeditions. The fact that these trips were not recorded in the official royal travel logs raises concerns right away. Charles and Camilla had a relationship before his marriage to Diana was ever scheduled, so the timing is ideal. This child would be their firstborn and the legitimate heir to the British throne if the accusations are accurate. Few people are aware that birth order is the most important factor in royal succession regulations. In theory, Prince William would not be as high in the line of succession as an illegitimate firstborn son. More unsettling information is revealed in the man's adoption narrative. According to reports, his adopted parents had close ties to British intelligence. They were bound to lifelong seclusion by signing lengthy non-disclosure agreements. What if the adoption was a well-planned scheme to conceal royal blood in plain sight rather than an accident? Intelligence organizations are experts at concealing unpleasant facts and fabricating new identities. Silence and protection would be guaranteed if a royal bastard was surrounded by well-connected households. The adoptive family of the boys was never poor, but not because they were affluent. Regularly, money came in quietly and with little explanation. They continued to get funding, seemingly from an unidentified source, year after year. It covered nearly everything, including housing, healthcare, and school costs. When he reached 18, the payments continued. They persisted, unchallenged, for decades. It might have appeared to onlookers as a kind gesture or a fortunate break. Whispers, however, reveal a different tale behind the palace walls. According to insiders, this was not the first instance of this kind of incident. The royal institution had had to discreetly address other circumstances and issues. Families receive financial aid in those situations as well, typically subject to an unwritten agreement. Don't ask questions, keep your head down, and be silent. It was all a part of a smoothly functioning system. Money, secrecy, and silence were used to bury any possible scandal that couldn't be eliminated. And as time went on, The royal family used those discreet arrangements as a means of clearing away everything that could jeopardize the crown's reputation. This man discreetly collected proof of his royal ancestry for decades. He looked into the enigmatic beginnings of his adoption records. He compared Charles's travel schedule with the time of his birth. He gathered pictures that demonstrated his unmistakable likeness to both of his purported parents. Most significantly, in an attempt to finally resolve the issue, he constantly asked the royal family for DNA testing. The palace always had the same answer: total quiet. His story became popular on social media a few years ago. Pictures that compared his face to Charles and Camilla's went viral on the internet. News organizations started looking into his allegations. The level of public interest skyrocketed. Then everything abruptly came to a halt. Stories vanished from popular websites. Reporters who had been following the case stopped talking. Posts on social media disappeared for no apparent reason. Just as swiftly as it had started, the viral moment ended. Royal public relations experts had put their most advanced damage control operation into action behind closed doors. Money was exchanged. There were threats of legal action. The narrative was methodically removed from the public's memory. This is what the palace was unable to manage, though. The man himself is still alive. The visage that reflects two of the most identifiable individuals on the planet is still with him. The evidence he gathered over the years is still with him. The fact is that forgotten tales tend to come to light again in the digital era. Inconvenient truths cannot be completely silenced thanks to social media. The crown has withstood scandals, divorces, and wars. Can it, however, withstand the discovery that the entire concept of royal succession has been based on deception? What impact would this have on the royal succession if this Australian man's claims were validated? In actuality, royal succession is more complex than custom. It is regulated by stringent laws that haven't changed in generations. Constitutional attorneys have secretly studied the potential outcomes of proving the legitimacy of Charles's purported firstborn son. For the current royal family, the response is scary. Regardless of the circumstances surrounding their birth or upbringing, the eldest legitimate child inherits the monarchy under British constitutional law. This Australian man might theoretically have a greater legal claim to the throne than Prince William if he is, in fact, Charles's eldest child. The ramifications are astounding. William has dedicated his life to becoming king. Every instruction, public appearance, and choice has been framed around his impending coronation. His offspring have been brought up to be the heirs to the monarchy in the future. The discovery that Prince William had an older half-brother would upend the whole basis of his life. He has always been certain that he will eventually become the ruler of Britain and the Commonwealth countries. According to royal insiders, William has a deeper sense of destiny and responsibility than most people understand. To get ready for his position, he has given up his personal liberties, professional decisions, and intimate relationships. As monarch, his carefully crafted identity would be shattered if it were revealed that he might be second in line. The psychological effects on William's kids would be just as terrible. An uncle he was unaware of would abruptly put Prince George, who was currently third in line for the throne, further down the line of succession. But Prince Harry might not be shocked at all. He already had to deal with the heartbreaking death of his mother, constant media attention, and a sense of exclusion from the institution. One more familial trick would only reinforce his worst fears regarding the monarchy. What if Harry's suspicions about certain secrets had a role in his decision to leave the royal life? Viewed through the prism of secret familial truths, his public remarks about feeling stuck in the system take on new significance. According to those close to Harry, he has long felt that the royal family puts the institution before any one of its members. His assertions that the monarchy is prepared to sacrifice everyone in order to defend the crown would be confirmed by the discovery of a secret brother. This discovery would be the final confirmation of everything Princess Diana attempted to convey to the world if she were still living today. It would almost seem prophetic that she mentioned the three individuals in her marriage in her well-known interview. In actuality, Diana always had a sneaking suspicion that the royal family was hiding more. If Elizabeth had learned that Charles was concealing a child, her mental health issues, loneliness, and desperate attempts to find her position in the monarchy would all have made perfect sense. The impossibility of keeping concealment in the current world is what distinguishes this possible crisis from previous royal scandals. It is practically impossible to bury the uncomfortable truth forever thanks to social media sites. Bloodline verification is now easier than ever thanks to advancements in DNA testing technologies. The instantaneous dissemination of information across worldwide networks renders the conventional instruments of financial settlements, controlled media narratives, gentlemen's agreements, and royal damage management ineffective. Palace officials realize behind closed doors that they are losing the war against transparency and technology. Previously subject to covert alteration or destruction, public records are now permanently maintained digitally. The scandal itself is not the most damaging part of this possible reveal. It would expose the basic insincerity that underlies the entire monarchical system. Constitutional scholars privately caution that such a disclosure would lead to the fall of the monarchy in some Commonwealth countries. When the custom itself is shown to be phony, nations that have upheld ties to the British crown on the basis of reverence for tradition may ultimately cut those ties off. Whether these things will finally come to light is not the question. When they do, the question is whether the crown can last. Do you think the rumors of an illegitimate heir should be addressed by the royal family in public? Or is keeping quiet still the best way to preserve the crown's heritage? If this Australian man's accusations were validated by DNA proof, does he have the authority to contest Prince William's succession ranking? Please let us know what you think in the comments area. For more, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Click the following video that appears on your screen as well. You'll like it.